Her ex mocked her at the wedding until the bartender jumped over the bar and said, "She's mine." The grand hall of Castle Viridian shimmered under thousands of torch flames, their light reflecting off polished stone floors and golden ornaments. The air was heavy with the scent of spiced wine and flowers, and the chatter of nobles echoed like a river over smooth stones.
Lyra, standing at the top of the main staircase, felt as though every eye in the hall was burning into her.
She should have felt joy. After all, today was her wedding day. Yet, a tight knot of dread twisted her stomach. She drew in a slow breath, smoothing the folds of her silver-blue gown. Her hands trembled just slightly, not from fear of the ceremony, but from the memory of him. Kyle. Years ago he had been her first love, charming and fearless, his laughter like sunlight spilling over dark water. She had trusted him with her heart, given him everything she had. And he had betrayed her, publicly humiliated her, left her pride in tatters while he basked in the admiration of others. Now, he sat at the high table, smug and polished, his dark eyes fixed on her. There was a cruel light behind them, a smirk playing on his lips. "Well, well," Kale said loudly, so the surrounding lords and ladies could hear. The once proud Lyra, all dressed in finery, looking as if she hoped someone will remember who she was before her reputation crumbled. His laugh rippled across the hall, and some courtiers snickered, though others looked away in shame. Lyra felt her cheeks burn, her jaw tightened. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. This was not the time. Not in front of the king, the nobles, and the glittering crowd. Then, from behind the long, polished bar near the corner of the hall, a movement caught her eye. A tall figure, dark-haired and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. He moved with a strange, silent grace, like a shadow that had suddenly taken shape. Bastian, the mysterious bartender whose presence had always been quiet yet impossible to ignore. No one knew much about him, where he came from, what powers he might possess, but something about him felt different, dangerous, yet oddly protective. And now, in a single decisive moment, he leapt, over the polished bar, over barrels of wine, his boots landing with a thud that silenced the court for a heartbeat. He raised his voice so it echoed in the vast hall. "She's mine!" Gasps rose from every corner. Nobles froze, glasses trembling in their hands. Kael's smirk faltered for the first time in years, replaced by a flash of irritation and disbelief. "And what makes you think you can claim her?" Kael called, voice sharp, slicing through the stunned silence. Bastian's eyes met Kael's, dark and unwavering. There was a strange glow in them, faint but undeniable. "Because I will protect her from those who do not deserve her," he said. "And no one will humiliate her again, not even you." Lyra's heart hammered. She had never expected anyone to stand for her like that. Not in a court that thrived on whispers, schemes, and power plays. The words, though simple, carried a promise of strength and danger, a warning that Bastian was not ordinary. Kael laughed, sharp and cruel. "A bartender dares to speak to a lord of the court? You amuse me. Perhaps she likes amusing fools." Bastian's expression did not waver. Instead, he stepped closer to Lyra, positioning himself between her and Kael. The space around him seemed to hum with tension, as if the torches themselves recognized the presence of power. "Step aside," he said, his voice low but commanding. "Or you will regret it." The court murmured, uneasy. Kael's pride flared. He was used to obedience, to bending others to his will with nothing more than a smile or a word. Yet here was someone who would not bow, who would not yield. A storm, standing tall in the middle of a feast hall. Lyra felt a strange surge of relief and fear, relief that someone dared to defend her. Fear because she sensed the danger surrounding this man. Something about him was not entirely mortal, and the knowledge prickled along her skin like static. Kael stood, straight-backed, his gaze cold and dangerous. "You dare threaten me in my own court?" "Cards!" The shout echoed through the hall, and armored men moved forward. But Bastian did not flinch. In a blur, he grabbed one of the nearest torches and swung it with precise force, not to harm, but to create a barrier between himself and the guards. They hesitated, unsure if the man before them was human or something more. Lyra took a step forward, her hand brushing against the hem of her gown. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the tension like a knife. "Bastian, stop." He turned his head toward her, expression softening for a moment. The harsh edges of the dangerous man melted into something gentler. "I will not let him hurt you again," he said. A small tremor of warmth passed through her chest. It was strange, this feeling of safety, this hope, after years of fear and betrayal. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. Cale's laugh was sharp, bitter. "So, a man with no title, no claim, dares to defy me. Very well. Let us see how far your loyalty goes when the night grows darker." With a sweeping motion, Cale returned to his seat, though his eyes never left Lyra. The tension did not dissipate. If anything, it thickened, a warning that the evening was far from over. The guests, unsure of what to do, slowly returned to their feigned conversations. Some stole glances at Lyra, some at Bastian, whispering rumors about the strange confrontation. Lyra's chest tightened. She had thought the humiliation of seeing Cale smirk would be the worst part of her day. She had been wrong. Bastian's presence was overwhelming, a quiet force that both terrified and fascinated her. He leaned closer, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in her bones. "Tonight is only the beginning. Cale will not stop. He thrives on control and humiliation. But I will not let him touch you again." Her lips parted, unsure what to say. Words felt inadequate against the weight of the moment, the intensity of his gaze, the unspoken promise of danger and protection. The hall suddenly grew colder, a shadow creeping along the stone walls as if the castle itself had noticed the disturbance. Torches flickered, and a soft, almost imperceptible hum filled the air, a whisper of magic long dormant. Lyra felt it deep in her chest, a resonance with something she had not acknowledged before. Something old. Something powerful. Bastian noticed it too. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment the gentle protector vanished, replaced by someone far more dangerous, far more aware of the forces surrounding them. Cale, oblivious to the subtle shift, rose from his seat once more, stepping forward with a predatory grace. "I am not a man to be challenged," he said, voice smooth. "Dangerous. You may claim to protect her, but you will learn your place." Bastian's gaze met his, unwavering. "I places where she is safe. That is all I seek." A sudden clap of thunder rolled outside the tall windows of the hall, the first in a long time. Rain pelted against the glass, sharp as arrows. The court murmured nervously. Storms were often seen as omens in these lands. Lyra's pulse quickened. The storm mirrored her emotions, wild, untamed, full of tension. Her eyes shifted between Cale and Bastian. One represented her painful past, the other an uncertain future filled with danger, desire, and perhaps salvation. Then, without warning, Cale's expression twisted with anger and emotion subtly. Several hidden allies in the court sprang to action, aiming to corner Bastian, to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. But Bastian moved like a shadow, fluid and unrelenting. He intercepted each move, his presence a wall of force. The crowd gasped as he stood firm, his body illuminated by the flickering torchlight, like a figure from legend come to life. Lyra realized with a mix of awe and fear that she had never seen a man fight for her, not like this, not with such unshakable determination. And yet, even as her heart stirred, she knew there was a darkness within him. A curse, a secret perhaps, that made him both protector and weapon. The tension reached a breaking point. Cale's allies hesitated, then retreated slightly, realizing that this man was not ordinary. Bastian's chest heaved, but he did not falter. He took a step closer to Lyra, tilting his head slightly, his voice steady and calm amid the chaos. "Stay close to me," he said. "I will not let him hurt you, not tonight, not ever again." Lyra's breath caught. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope, a fragile, trembling hope that perhaps the past could be confronted, and a new path, dangerous and uncertain though it was, could be chosen. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the castle's towers in a brilliant white light. Inside, the court felt frozen in time, the storm outside echoing the storm within the hall, within her heart. And as Bastian's dark eyes held hers, unwavering and intense, she understood something she had never allowed herself to feel. That her fate was no longer entirely her own, but neither was it entirely Cale's. It belonged, somehow, to this mysterious man who had leaped across the bar and claimed her, not with ownership, but with protection. The night had only begun, and the storm promised that nothing would ever be the same again. The storm outside the castle raged with an unrestrained fury. Rain lashed against the tall arched windows of Castle Viridian, turning the night into a silver blur. Thunder rolled across the hills, shaking the stone walls as if the castle itself responded to the tension inside. Lyra sat in a quiet corridor just off the grand hall, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The echoes of the wedding feast, Cale's mocking laughter, and Bastian's sudden, impossible leap over the bar still churned in her mind. She could feel the memory of his declaration, "She's mine," lingering in her chest like fire. She did not know whether to feel fear, awe, or something unnameable. She had been raised to trust few, to weigh every glance and every word. Yet Bastian, this enigmatic man with dark eyes that seemed to pierce through shadows, felt like a force of destiny she could not resist. A quiet sound made her start. Bastian stepped from the shadows, his boots barely making a sound on the stone floor. He carried himself with that same strange, unshakable confidence that had silenced Cale's smugness in the hall. "You should not be left alone," he said softly, his voice carrying over the rain's rhythm. "He will not stop so easily. And the court will never forgive a slight like tonight." Lyra swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "Why do you care? Why risk yourself like that?" Bastian paused, his eyes reflecting the flickering torchlight. "Because I cannot watch someone like him, like Cale, hurt you again. You are not his to belittle, and neither is your life yours alone anymore." "Not tonight." She blinked, startled by his words. The conviction in his tone was undeniable. There was no room for argument. He spoke with a certainty she had never felt from anyone, not even from kings or knights. "Not mine alone," she whispered, as though testing the truth of his statement. "Yes," he said, stepping closer. His presence felt like a shield, and yet the faint glow that seemed to shimmer along his form hinted at a power she could not comprehend. "And soon, you will understand why. There are forces at work tonight you cannot see. Forces older than this castle, older than the bloodlines of kings." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had always known her family's lands carried whispers of magic and hidden dangers, but she had never believed those stories could reach her wedding day. And yet, the way Bastian spoke, the way the air seemed to tremble around him, she realized that the stories might be true. A sudden noise drew her attention. Cale's shadow moved along the corridor at the far end, slipping quietly, almost like a predator hunting. He had left the hall, but his intent was clear. He would not allow her to escape the night without his interference. Bastian's gaze followed the movement, sharp and precise. "He thinks he can control everything," Bastian said quietly, more to himself than to her. "He will learn that some things cannot be owned or commanded, not even by him." Lyra's curiosity overcame her fear. "What do you mean? What do you mean by some things cannot be owned?" He hesitated, as though deciding how much to reveal. "There's a curse," he finally said. "Bound to me, but not entirely mine. It ties me to those I protect. It gives me strength, and it gives me danger. To harm someone I claim is to awaken forces you cannot imagine." Lyra's eyes widened. She felt the shiver run along her spine. A curse. That explained the strange aura he carried, the way the castle seemed to respond to him. It explained the fear he inspired in Cale, who otherwise had no equal in courtly power. "And you are dangerous?" she asked, her voice small. Bastian knelt slightly so their eyes met. There was no malice in his gaze, only honesty, and a depth of feeling she could not name. "Dangerous to those who mean harm," he said softly. "To others, only if they push too far. I do not claim what is not mine, but I will fight for what I must protect." Lyra's chest tightened. She had never known someone who could speak with such quiet power. There was a temptation in him, a pull that went beyond fear or admiration, and yet she felt the weight of his words, the warning that this was only the beginning. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow and deliberate. Cale had followed them, no doubt seeking a moment to humiliate her further or strike at Bastian. Lyra tensed, but Bastian's hand was suddenly on her arm, steadying her. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "He will come, and when he does, we will not falter." Cale emerged from the shadows, his cloak brushing the cold stone floor. His eyes gleamed with malice and certainty. "So we meet again," he said, his tone deceptively calm. "And the faithful shadow guards you. How amusing." Bastian did not move from his protective stance. "You will not touch her," he said firmly. A laugh, soft but dangerous, escaped Cale's lips. "You are bold, but boldness is no match for power." The words were not mere threats. They carried the weight of the court, the legacy of noble blood, and the arrogance of one who had never truly feared consequence. Yet Bastian did not flinch. His hand brushed lightly against Lyra's, a silent gesture of reassurance and warning. Lyra felt a sudden surge of something unfamiliar. Courage, not her own, not yet, but borrowed from the man who had placed himself between her and danger. She straightened, meeting Cale's gaze with as much strength as she could muster. "You will not have me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Cale's expression faltered for the briefest moment, but pride quickly replaced surprise. "We shall see," he said, and with a movement almost too quick to follow, he stepped back into the shadows, leaving an unsettling silence in his wake. Bastian exhaled slowly, his gaze scanning the corridor. "This is only the beginning," he said. "He will not rest. He cannot stand that you are no longer under his control, and you must prepare. For your power, your courage will be tested whether you wish it or not." Lyra felt a flicker of fear. She had never believed herself powerful. She had been a bride, dressed in finery, expected to be admired, but not feared. And yet Bastian's words suggested that something within her was awakening, a force long buried, waiting for this night to rise. The storm outside intensified, rain hammering the windows, lightning illuminating the corridors in blinding white flashes. It was as if the castle itself was alive, reacting to the tension, the confrontation, the magic that now hummed between them. Bastian turned to her, eyes dark with concern. "There are hidden dangers in this castle, forces that respond to anger, to desire, to betrayal. You must stay close to me. Trust me, even if it frightens you." Lyra nodded slowly. Fear warred with curiosity, with longing, with something deeper she could not yet name. She took a step closer, feeling the warmth of his presence and the strange comfort of his promise. A sudden movement caught her eye. Shadows in the corner twisted unnaturally, forming shapes that defied the torchlight. She gasped, and Bastian's hand was instantly at her shoulder, steadying her, his gaze sharp. "Magic," he said quietly, almost reverently. "It has sensed him. The curse, his malice. It is waking, and soon it will demand attention." Lyra's heart raced. The stories she had heard as a child whispered warnings of old curses and hidden power in her family's lands now seemed real, tangible, and immediate. She wanted to run, to hide, to escape the weight of destiny pressing down upon her. But the thought of leaving Bastian behind, or being left alone, was unbearable. They moved deeper into the castle, corridors twisting like living things, shadows dancing and flickering unnaturally. Bastian guided her with calm certainty, yet his own vigilance never faltered. Finally, they reached a small chamber lit by a single torch. It was quiet, but not peaceful. The walls seemed to hum faintly, as though resonating with the magic that now lingered in the air. Bastian faced her, his dark eyes holding a depth she could not read. "You are not safe, Lyra," he said. "Not from him, not from the forces that stir around you. But you are not alone. And I will not fail you." Lyra felt a warmth she had not known for years. For a moment, all the fear, all the pain, seemed to melt away, replaced by a fragile hope. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to believe that perhaps, in this night of storms and curses, a new path could begin. Yet the feeling was fleeting. A distant sound of footsteps, soft but purposeful, echoed through the corridor. Cale was coming, and with him, the danger that would not rest until he had reclaimed what he believed was his. Lyra's pulse quickened. She turned to Bastian, eyes wide. "He's not finished," she whispered. Bastian's gaze hardened, and for the first time that night the faint glow in his eyes flared brighter, revealing the hidden power within him. "No," he said. "He will not touch you again." "Not while I stand." The storm raged, lightning splitting the sky, and in the flickering shadows of the castle, two fates, entwined by magic, destiny, and the promise of protection, stood ready to face what was coming next. The storm had passed, leaving the castle drenched in silver light from the full moon. Rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet stone and earth, heavy and alive. Shadows stretched across the corridors, moving strangely, as if the castle itself remembered the chaos of the night before. Lyra stood at the top of the grand staircase, her eyes tracing the flickering torchlight. She had not slept, nor had she felt truly at rest. The events of the wedding hall replayed in her mind. The mockery of Cale, Bastian's impossible leap, and the strange humming magic that had stirred in the castle walls. Bastian appeared at her side, silent as the shadow he always seemed to carry. His dark eyes scanned the halls, alert, and the faint glow that surrounded him seemed to pulse in tune with the castle itself. "You should not wander alone," he said quietly, his voice low, yet carrying the weight of command. "Cale is still watching, and the castle, it is alive with more than just stone and torchlight. Something stirs in these walls." Lyra's hand brushed the banister as she descended. "Something stirs," she echoed. "What do you mean?" Bastian's gaze softened briefly. "The curse. Mine, yours, the one that follows this castle and everyone who dares to awaken its power. It has sensed him, Cal, and it has sensed you. You are not just a bride tonight, Lyra. You are something more." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Something more? I don't understand. What am I supposed to be?" He stepped closer, the faint glow around him flickering like silver fire. "You have a power you have not yet seen, a strength hidden by fear, by past betrayal, by the world that would rather you be small. But the curse responds to it, and to me. And now, Cale's malice will stir it awake whether you are ready or not." Lyra's pulse quickened. The stories of magic her family whispered as legend, the warnings of powers older than the king himself. All of it felt suddenly real. She had always felt different, yes, but she had buried it beneath courtesy and duty. She had never imagined it could reach this level, this intensity. A distant sound made her flinch, a soft metallic echo, like footsteps on stone. Cale. Of course, he had not left. He never truly left when he had a target. Bastian's hand found hers, gripping it with gentle force. "Come," he said. "We must move. We cannot face him openly yet. The castle will guide us, but the magic is unstable. Every step must be careful." Lyra followed, though her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She felt the pull of something deep inside her chest, a current she had never noticed before. With every step, the hum of the castle walls seemed louder, Resonating with her heartbeat, they reached a narrow corridor where the torches flickered violently, casting shadows that seemed almost alive. Bastion held out a hand, not touching the walls, but guiding her through an invisible path. The castle's magic hummed, responding to him, to her, to the tension between the two of them. Kale's voice suddenly echoed from the far end, smooth and venomous. "You cannot hide from me, Lyra. You belong where I say you belong." Lyra's chest tightened, but she did not retreat. The strength Bastion had promised seemed to hum within her now, a faint pulse of courage she had never known. Bastion stepped in front of her, blocking her view of Kale. "He will not touch you," he said, his voice steady. "And if he tries, the consequences will be beyond what he expects." Kale laughed softly, a sound that slid like ice across the corridor. "Beyond what I expect? Perhaps. Or perhaps you will learn that even shadows can fall." The words carried a warning, a challenge, and in that moment, the castle responded. The shadows twisted, the stone walls seeming to breathe. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through Lyra's chest, her hands, even the soles of her feet. She stumbled slightly, and Bastion caught her, steadying her with a hand that was firm but gentle. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. "You are awakening," Bastion said simply. "The power in you, in this castle, it is old. Older than kings, older than the bloodlines of the lords who sit in feasts and call themselves rulers. And it will test you, Lyra. It will push you, frighten you, and demand choices you never imagined you would face." Her breath came faster now. "Choices? What choices?" "Between control and surrender," Bastion replied. "Between fear and courage. Between your past and your future. And between him and me." Lyra felt the heat of his words. Her pulse, her thoughts, everything in her body seemed to be shifting. She could not deny the connection, the strange pull she felt toward him. At the same time, she could not deny the shadow of Kael, looming over her life, mocking her even in his absence. A sudden sharp sound made them both turn. The corridor behind them shifted unnaturally. Torches flared and dimmed, shadows twisting into strange serpentine forms that slithered along the walls. "The curse," Bastion said, his jaw tight. "It is awake. It senses him. And it senses you." Lyra's hand tightened around his. What will it do?" "It will test you," he said. "And it will protect you if you can command it. But if you falter, if you let fear rule, it can consume everything." The air thickened, as if the corridor itself were breathing. Shadows stretched toward them, almost alive, whispering in voices only half heard, words that made the skin on her neck prickle. Kale stepped into the corridor then, smooth and predatory, as if he had appeared from nowhere. "So, this is the protection you rely on, Lyra." His eyes were cold, calculating. "Do you think he can save you from me, from what you truly are?" Bastion's eyes glowed faintly, the curse within him flaring. "Step back," he said, "or you will see just how far I will go to keep her safe." Kale smirked.
And yet, some forces cannot be tamed, even by shadows like you.
Walls vibrated, shadows twisted, and an unseen wind whipped through the corridor. Lyra's pulse pounded in her ears as she felt a strange energy stirring inside her. The faintest whisper of heat, of power, of something she could neither name nor control, surged in her chest. "Lyra," Bastion said, his voice steady despite the rising chaos. "Focus on me. Trust me. Trust yourself." She closed her eyes for a moment, drawing a slow breath. The whispers of magic in the walls, the hum of the air, the glow from Bastion's eyes, all of it coalesced into a single sensation. Strength, power, and fear intertwined. She opened her eyes and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if recognizing her awakening. Kale stepped forward, surprised, even a little wary. "You, what are you doing?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Lyra did not answer with words. She raised her hands, and the pulse of energy she felt surged outward, gentle but undeniable. The shadows twisted back, the air itself vibrating with the power she had long hidden. Bastian's expression softened, a mixture of pride and awe. "Yes," he whispered, "you see it now. This is only the beginning." Kale's lips twisted in anger. He had faced many opponents, but never one like this. Never a bride who could summon a force older than the courts themselves, a force intertwined with the curse that bound Bastian. "You may have power," he said, stepping back, "but power is nothing without control." Lyra's chest heaved. Control. She had never truly understood it before. Yet now, in the chaos of the corridor, in the presence of Bastian, she felt the first spark of mastery. She could feel the pulse of the curse around her, around him, a tether connecting them in ways she could not yet name. The storm outside, long gone, left the night silent but heavy, filled with anticipation. The castle itself seemed to settle, as if waiting for the next move. Bastian moved close, his hand brushing against hers, grounding her. "The curse is awake," he said quietly, "and so is your heart. Both will be tested, Lyra." "And the test is not yet over." Lyra nodded, understanding that this was not a fight of swords or words, but of courage, trust, and strength neither of them had faced before. They moved forward together, the shadows behind them, the castle alive with ancient power, and the knowledge that Kale would not give up until he had tested both of them to the limit.
The castle of Viridian seemed to hold its breath.
The moonlight poured through shattered windows in the storm-tossed towers, illuminating halls slick with rainwater and shadow. Every step Lyra took echoed against stone walls that hummed faintly, alive with the magic awakened by the curse. She and Bastian moved together, silent but alert. The bond between them had grown stronger over the past night, a tether of trust and unspoken understanding, woven through danger, fear, and the pulse of their powers. But the danger was far from over. Kale had not disappeared. He had only been waiting, watching, preparing to strike with the cunning of a man who had never learned the meaning of defeat. Lyra's hands trembled slightly, but this time not from fear. From within her chest rose a steady heat, a confidence born of understanding her own power for the first time. She had felt the curse's pulse, the magic of the castle responding to her heartbeat, and she knew she could no longer be the helpless bride, the silent target of Kale's malice. "Are you ready?" Bastian's voice was quiet, steady, carrying the weight of command. His dark eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight, the shadows, and the latent power of the curse that bound them. Lyra met his gaze. "I am ready," she said, and for the first time, she believed it. The hallway ahead twisted unnaturally, as though the castle itself were alive, directing them toward their confrontation. Shapes flickered in the corners of her vision, shadows that were not quite shadows, whispering in voices she could almost understand. The castle's magic thrummed, responding to both fear and courage, to Bastian and her. Kale appeared at the end of the hall, smooth and predatory, his dark cloak flowing like liquid night. His eyes gleamed with arrogance and fury. "So, you think yourself powerful?" he said, his voice echoing against the stone. "You may have learned tricks from the shadows, but you will never stand against me." Bastian stepped in front of her, a barrier and a promise. "Power alone is meaningless," he said. "Courage, trust, and choice, that is what matters. And she has all three." Kale laughed, bitter and sharp. "Choice? Courage? These are words for the weak. Power will decide tonight." The castle seemed to respond instantly. The air thickened, and the walls pulsed with a pale silver light. The shadows along the corridor stretched, coiling like serpents, and the torches flickered violently. Lyra's pulse quickened. She could feel the magic in her own veins, the energy of the curse, the heartbeat of the castle itself. "You will not harm her," she said, her voice stronger than she had imagined possible. "Not tonight. Not ever." Kale's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his face. He had underestimated her. For too long he had assumed that fear and mockery could control her, that he could dominate the hearts and wills of others with arrogance alone. But this night, he saw a force he had never faced. Courage, awakened and unstoppable. Bastian's hand found hers. The warmth of his touch steadied her, as the magic around them intensified. Together they stepped forward, their presence a single, unbreakable line of defense. Kale's aura flared, dark and twisting, a storm of malice and pride. He struck first, a wave of force that would have thrown any ordinary opponent to the ground. But Lyra felt the power within her respond instinctively. Energy pulsed outward, gentle but firm, forming a shield around her and Bastian. Kale's wave met the barrier, crackling against it, and he staggered slightly, shocked. "You! What is this?" he demanded, fury darkening his voice. Lyra's chest heaved, but she did not falter. "It is my choice," she said, "and my power. You cannot take it from me."
Bastian's glow intensified, his voice joining hers. "Together, we are stronger than you ever imagined."
"The curse is not a chain. It is protection, and it will not fail." Kael's eyes narrowed. He lunged, faster than thought, shadows and malice trailing him. The walls of the castle seemed to shift around them, bending with the force of the magic released. Lyra and Bastian moved as one, each step in perfect synchrony, their hands brushing, their hearts beating together. Every movement called forth more of the power she had feared, and more of the curse's protection. Lyra realized something she had not before. The curse did not control her. It responded to her courage, her choices, and her will. The magic flowed through her, guided by Bastian's presence, but ultimately hers to command. Kael struck again, and this time he did not simply lash out. He whispered her name, attempting to twist her mind with memories of the past, of betrayal, of fear. Lyra faltered for a moment, but Bastian's hand gripped hers, and she remembered the strength that had risen within her during the last night. "Not him," she whispered fiercely. "Never him." A surge of energy pulsed through her. Shadows recoiled, and the magic of the castle responded, forming a glowing barrier around Kael. He tried to push through, tried to strike with the force he had always relied upon, but the combined power of Lyra and Bastian held firm. "You will not break us," Bastian said, his voice calm and commanding, the faint glow around him flaring brighter than ever. "You are alone. Your power is nothing without fear or loyalty." "And we have both." Kael's eyes flashed with anger. He had faced many opponents, many challenges, but never one where the strength of another's heart and courage could override his malice. He stumbled, the shadows around him shrinking, the walls no longer bending to his will. Lyra stepped forward, her own energy now a river of strength flowing from within. "This is the end," she said. "The past cannot control the present, and you will not control me or him." Kael's form wavered, darkness flickering, until with one final cry of fury he fell back, his power dissolving like mist in the wind. He was defeated not by violence alone, but by courage, trust, and the awakening of the forces that had always been hers. The castle settled around them, the hum of magic fading into a quiet rhythm. The shadows returned to their corners, the walls straightened and the torches burned steadily, as though nothing had disturbed the night. Yet the air still vibrated faintly, a reminder that magic, once awakened, never truly slept. Bastian turned to Lyra, his eyes softening. "You did it," he said quietly. "You controlled the power, embraced the curse, and faced him. You were stronger than even I knew." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "I did it because you were with me," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "I would not have found the courage alone." Bastian smiled faintly, though a shadow lingered in his expression. "We faced it together. That is what matters. And now we can begin truly living, free from fear." For the first time that night, Lyra allowed herself to exhale fully. The weight of humiliation, of fear, of Kael's cruelty lifted from her shoulders. She felt lighter, freer, yet aware of the bond she now shared with Bastian, a bond forged not by ownership or command, but by trust, protection, and shared power. The storm had passed, leaving the night calm, and yet the castle seemed alive with quiet magic. As though acknowledging their triumph, Lyra walked closer to Bastian, their hands brushing, their shoulders almost touching. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No. You saved yourself. I only stood with you. And together, we are stronger than any curse, any shadow, or any malice." For a long moment they stood together, watching the moonlight fall through the high windows, casting silvery patterns across the floor. The castle was silent, peaceful, yet charged with the promise of new beginnings. Lyra felt a strange sense of completion, but also anticipation. She had faced her fear, her past, and her power. She had learned that courage, trust, and love were forces stronger than even the darkest malice, and she had discovered that some bonds, those of hearts and spirits, could transcend curses, shadows, and even time itself. Bastian leaned closer, his voice a soft promise. "This is only the beginning, Lyra. The castle, the magic, our lives, they will always challenge us. But together there is nothing we cannot face." Lyra smiled, a real, unguarded smile for the first time in years. "Then we face it together," she said. The moonlight shone through the shattered windows, bathing them in silver. The castle was quiet yet alive. Outside, the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon, painting the sky in soft gold and pink. And as they stood side by side, Lyra and Bastian knew that the trials were over for now, that the darkness had passed, and that a new chapter awaited. A life bound not by fear, not by curses, but by courage, trust, and the promise of shared hearts. The storm had ended, but the world, full of magic, shadows, and endless possibilities, awaited.